June 17th, 1462, Vlad Dracula led the infamous night attack at Targovsk and caused such terror and turmoil against Mehmed II's Ottoman forces that the Sultan abandoned the camp and fled in a shameful manner. The result was the Forest of the Dead, 23,844 impaled Turks on Vlad's command. This, of course, inspired near countless fictional tales of Vlad the Vampire, called Count Dracula in popular culture. I've had a fascination with the vampire since early childhood. My favorite cinematic Dracula was Jack Palance in Dan Curtis's 1973 adaptation. Curtis was responsible for many of my most favorite vampire interpretations. The aforementioned Dracula, Dark Shadows' Barnabas Collins, and the vampire from the telefilm, Kolchak the Night Stalker. The question for me has always been, do vampires exist? Or at the very least, did they? I wish I had an answer for you. I've never investigated a case in which someone was the victim of a blood-sucking vampire, though I have dealt with the psychic kind. But I do not discount the possibility. The sheer volume of folk tales related to vampirism across continents and varied ethnic and cultural groups clearly means there's something to it. The closest I came to taking part in the investigation of reported vampire activity was through an invitation from the so-called Bishop, Sean Manchester, primate of the British Old Catholic Church, to join him for a return to Highgate, that most notorious and fantastic cemetery wherein he acquired his notoriety alongside David Ferrant in the 1970s. I corresponded with Bishop Manchester for some time in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I was keen on the adventure, but we fell out, in large part because Manchester is more than a bit out there. But in this field, who isn't? The Highgate story has always fascinated me, largely because I would love for it to be true. The story goes, on the night of Halloween, 1968, a graveyard desecration occurred in the London cemetery. Someone had arranged flowers taken from graves in circular patterns with arrows pointing to a freshly dug and uncovered grave. There, a coffin lay exposed, and the body inside had an iron stake in the form of a cross driven through the lid and into the corpse's chest. Heady stuff, especially for a kid in rural Indiana reading about it in, I think it was Fate magazine, about 1974 or so. It most likely was an earlier edition, as my grandfather had stacks of Fate, true crime, and detective magazines just lying about. In March of 1970, a mob had descended on Highgate to hunt the vampire after numerous reports of sightings, and following the publicity of Manchester performing an exorcism, not to mention Ferrant's activities as well. Things were getting out of hand. Then in August that same year, the charred and headless remains of a woman's body were found near the Highgate catacomb, with the police declaring it an act of black magic. The 70s really were the headwaters of the occult revival, fueled by pop culture and the global social and political upheavals of those turbulent times. It makes one wonder if we're not on the cusp of increased paranormal activity due to our own global social and political turmoil. Time, as they say, will tell.